Well, Scott Benson, thank you for joining us on Talking with Tatum.
Good to be here, Judge. Thanks for asking.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you. And for people who don't know, tell us a little bit about what you do and what your title is, and then we'll get into the mechanics of what we wanted to talk about.
Okay, I can tell you I'm the Director of Schools or Superintendent. Those terms are interchangeable in the state of Tennessee. But I'm the Superintendent of Schools for the Lebanon Special School District here in Lebanon. And we're obviously a small school district here in Wilson County. We've got about 4,000 students and about 500 employees in the Lebanon Special School District.
So one of the largest employers, I guess.
We are, yes.
In the city of
maybe
Lebanon.
secondary to Wilson County Schools.
Okay. And I was thinking before we went on the air just how many schools that you have. I believe 4 elementary schools and 2 middle schools.
That is correct, and we are currently building our 5th elementary school, Jones Brummett Elementary, on the corner of Hartman and Coles Ferry, and it will open in August of 21.
Okay. And so next year, it's under construction right now.
Correct.
And how long have you been the superintendent for the Lebanon Special
Been the superintendent since January 1 of 2012.
Well, you've had a long time in the saddle, almost a decade.
Yeah.
And really what we wanted to get you out to talk about was this particular school year. And y'all plan a school year a year ahead of time, don't you?
We do. Typically, summertime is a lot more laid back than the school year, but that's a good time for us to plan for the upcoming school year. And like you said, I've been in the saddle for almost a decade, and we have a wonderful team at the Lebanon Special School District that with a lot of experience as well. So, typically we could do it just on autopilot, to be honest with you, preparing for the next school year. Not so much today.
Well, as we all know, starting around spring break of this year, everything changed in our lives with the quarantine for the COVID-19 virus. And in the bigger picture, we had the tornado that came through the first part of March. That didn't really affect the Lebanon Special School District, did it?
Well, it did. It impacted us tremendously. Judge, the last day we were in school was the day of the tornado, March 2nd.
Okay. And
the tornado came that evening. And so, as you well know, our community was in shambles in many areas. So we were out of school starting the 3rd.
Okay.
And heavily involved in the cleanup in the community. But I think you were probably referring to, we did not have a school that was damaged.
Right.
And so, thankfully, we did not in our school district have a school that was damaged, but we were still greatly impacted because we could not go back to school from that date, from the tornado, and that led right into the COVID-19 situation.
And you get information from various sources, from the State Department of Health, from the governor, local government that all goes in, and I guess the Department of Education. And what went into the decision saying that we're not going to be able to start back school right now and perhaps be able to do it before the end of the school year? Just give us an overview about that decision-making process.
That news and the whole COVID-19 situation happened rapidly, as you recall, and I don't remember the dates exactly. I've slept several times since then, but we went right from the tornado and the cleanup involvement there, and it moved right into the COVID-19 situation where we were really getting direction at that point from the state and from the governor, and ultimately from the governor when the governor came out and said, we highly recommend that you close school for the remainder of the school year. And so when the governor highly recommends, we're going to follow that recommendation. And so we did with every other school district, with all 145 of us. There are 145 school districts in the state of Tennessee. We closed down. And most school districts went to mid-March, right up to their spring break, as you mentioned. But here in Wilson County and in the Lebanon Special School District, our last day was March 2nd.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there was some talk, though, early on during the shutdown process that perhaps we'll be able to start school sometime in April, perhaps April 1st, middle of April, then 1st of May. And that all got put by the wayside.
Yeah, it did. And so early in the COVID-19 situation, we were making plans, hoping that we would be out for a week or two, maybe a month, and it kept building. And so pretty early on, in that stage, we in our school district, we decided that we would have 3 goals that we would try to end the school year with. And at that point, we weren't sure if we were coming back, but then pretty soon after that, we knew we weren't going to be attending school anymore in the previous school year. But as a school district, we wanted to concentrate on three things, Judge. And number one was to encourage our families and each other within the district. And you know what our community was like right after the tornado, et cetera. So we really wanted to be an encouragement to our families and our students. And our employees, our staff, during that time. We wanted to feed children, and I know you're well aware of our efforts in the Lebanon Special School District for many years now to feed children in our community. And we wanted to keep students connected to learning. And we were strategic in using that word connected. We realized ending last school year, the 1920 school year, we really weren't offering an education. It hit us overnight. We weren't in school. We were in school the second, expecting to be back the third. We weren't and haven't been back yet. So we knew then that everybody that had been impacted by the tornado, and so many within our school district were impacted by the tornado, and then moving into the COVID-19, that we wanted to keep students as connected as they wanted to be. But we didn't want to overburden anybody. School really wasn't the most important thing at that point. And so that's really what we operated on to end the school year, focusing on those three areas. And I'm really proud of our principals and our teachers and our staff because they just did a wonderful job. We've got a wonderful team, and they just did tremendous work ending the school year in those three areas. And so just really proud of our folks, and that carried us right up to the end of the school year, what would have been the end of the school year. And we had different drive-by, drive-through celebrations and graduations and ceremonies and those kind of things at different schools. It looked a little different. But we ended the school year and started the summer, and that's how we did it.
And the students who were, let's say, in the third grade, this year they got 3/4 of the way through the school year. Or you could expect them to be promoted to the fourth grade this upcoming year?
That would be a good expectation.
Okay.
And what we said was, what we talked to our principals and our teachers about, that on March 2nd, if you as a student, if you were on track to pass that grade and to end in a passing situation, we wanted to keep you on track. Okay. If there were students that needed some remediation to be on track, we wanted to try to work with those students during March, April, May to see if we couldn't get those students to where they were on track. Now, there's always a few scenarios, few situations across the district, very few, but there are always a handful of situations where a student would be held back for a different reason. And we had that this year. We had a handful of those, but we always communicate very well with the parents and meet with the parents and talk about deficits and the advantages of being passed on or the advantages of repeating a grade and that sort of thing. So, but that's pretty much how we operated. That if you were on track on March 2nd, you were going to be on track at the end of May.
Well, I know what you've tried to do about trying to keep the food program going in the community. And that's something that y'all have done for years.
Yeah.
But as far as teachers in the classroom, principals in the school, y'all continue to do that as well, did you not?
Feeding?
Not feeding, I mean the classroom instruction and having stuff for students to study for home. Or
Okay,
giving
gotcha.
that special attention.
Yeah, we did that virtually and from a distance, so to speak. So we've been a one-to-one school district since 2014, one device to one student. And in middle school, grades 6, 7, and 8, our students have been for years taking that device home with them 24/7.
The Chromebook.
The Chromebook. So in elementary, grades 3 through 5, every student has a Chromebook and it's assigned to them, but they've been keeping those at school. And then the lower grades, we have about 2-to-1 there, and those devices stayed at school. So we had days real early in the COVID situation where we would deploy Chromebooks and materials. So
Okay.
the principal and teachers would communicate with their folks and cars would line up around the block, and we would hand out devices if they needed it, resources if they needed it, chargers to the Chromebooks if they needed it, and so our teachers kept our students connected to learning throughout the school year. And the way we operated there, we asked our teachers to reach out at least twice a week, to check on your students at least twice a week.
Right.
And that could look different in every school. It could look different in each individual classroom. But many of our teachers were doing things every day because we had students and families that wanted to be connected every day. But again, we didn't want to overwhelm anybody. We didn't want to be assigning homework, if they didn't have a roof over their head.
Right.
But we did stay connected, and that's how we did it. We did it virtually. I heard so many creative stories about our teachers and how they communicated with our students, and some of them, even did visit their students and would visit across the yard wearing masks and those kind of things, and would take them gifts, food if they needed it with the backpack program and other things. So our teachers were really creative and worked hard to stay connected to our students and families during that time.
Well, I know it must be a matter or a source of pride for you and the school board and all the administrative staff and the community as a whole about the interest that the teachers have in teaching their kids and taking an interest in those families.
It is, and I think probably in times of stress, true colors come out, and teachers, 99.9% of the teachers anywhere, they got in it for the right reason, and they love kids and they love people, and they want to help kids and they want to support children, and so that was the attitude of our people. And it was really a prideful moment for us in the district. And we communicated that, to our principals and our staff, and we continued to meet with our principals about on a weekly basis through Zoom. I'm sure you've been in Zoom meetings, Judge, and other avenues as well. So we kept in touch with each other and communicated all the happenings throughout the district, and we haven't gotten there yet, but even more so with leadership in the district and principals, et cetera, as we've been planning for the new school year. But just made the best of a bad situation for everybody
In a real short amount of time, too.
Overnight. Overnight. Yeah, we were building the plane as we were taking off.
That's a scary prospect. But probably this time a year ago, you had the school calendar in place for the 1920 school year, but y'all had already planned out, I guess, the calendar for the 2021 school year, probably about a year ago now.
Oh yeah, it's been in place for well over a year.
So school for the 2021 school year, when was the Lebanon Special School District supposed to start back?
Well, on the calendar, our start date is August 3rd.
Okay. And is that still the start date for this year?
That's a great question. And as of now, it is. Okay. We obviously have been planning for weeks and months for the upcoming school year in this ever-changing situation that we find ourselves in, and it changes daily, it changes weekly. We were working on our next communication to our stakeholders, to our families today. It's probably going to go out Friday or Monday of next week. And literally, as we were working on it today, with some of the news in the media today about Wilson County and the rise in COVID cases, et cetera, we had to put a little asterisk and have an explanation beside in the communication we were working on today. So August 3rd is still going to be our start date. It's going to look a little different when we start, but yes, we're still shooting for August 3rd.
Now, when you say it's going to look a little different, of course, first day of school, in elementary school, I remember you would go in and there would be the teacher would have written out a list about this is your classroom, and you'd look for your child's name on there. You're not going to have an open...
We hadn't done that in a long time, Judge.
Well, it's been a long time since I was in elementary school, and what's it going to look like now, the first day of school?
Okay, so can I
sit here today?
Yeah, can I back up a little bit
and
tell you what we've communicated so far?
Yeah.
We've had several communications over the last several months about our planning and where we've been. And so pretty early on in the summer, we communicated that we're planning for 3 scenarios.
Okay.
And depending on the current situation in August, will depend on where we land. But we're planning for scenario 1, which would be a traditional type setting, a normal type setting in school, with students in the building, obviously with many safety precautions in place. Number 2, looking at a distance learning model, somewhat like the way we ended school, although we do realize we would be responsible for offering a high quality education when school starts, unlike just staying connected at the end of last school year. And the third scenario is a blended model, really where you blend those two, where we have some people in school some of the time, some people at home some of the time with distance learning. And it could be a fluid situation where it looks differently depending on the current situation. An example of that would be, and there are hundreds of examples, but one example that I could give you just for understanding would be like an A-B schedule. So if on Monday was a planning and a flex day where you could bring in invited students or whatnot, a planning day or a virtual day, but a group of students would be classified as an A group. If we just split our student body in half and you have half of them as an A group, they go to school on Tuesday and Thursday physically in the building. And then your B group would physically come to school Wednesday and Friday.
Okay.
And then on the days when they're not in school, we engage them virtually. So those have been the 3 scenarios that we've been planning for. We sent a communication out a week or 2 ago. All my days are running together.
Right. When you send a communication out, is that a text message? Is it an email?
That's good. We can send school messenger messages out, and those are call outs that you get on your phone. Also emails. We send out messages through our LSSD app that you can have on your phone.
Okay.
We send out on Twitter, and we also send out on our website.
Okay.
So there are multiple avenues there where you could receive our information. And so, we try to catch everybody.
Right.
And so when we push something out, we send it out through all those avenues. So the most recent one that we sent out, we told everybody at that point, it's our goal to open up in scenario 1,
okay,
which is a traditional model with safety precautions in place. However, because we have been having strategic planning groups throughout the summer, we've met with groups of teachers, we've met with groups of parents, we've met with experts in the community, health department, hospital, law enforcement, WEMA, etc. And we've also sent out surveys to our parents,
okay,
asking them to rank those 3 scenarios, which one are they most comfortable with, which one are they least comfortable with. After we sent that survey, we sent another survey asking just solely about distance learning and remote learning. Because we had a percentage of people that were interested in that and that were not comfortable coming back to school in a traditional setting.
Right.
So now where we are is our goal is to start school in that traditional setting with safety precautions in place, but we are also, in addition to that, going to offer a virtual academy.
okay,
So if your family is not comfortable for whatever reason, the child has health problems, the parents have health concerns, they're taking care of grandparents, whatever it is, they will be able to apply and qualify for our virtual academy.
So it's need-based.
So it's need-based,
Okay.
And you have to apply and qualify for it.
Okay.
So we have quite a bit of interest in that track. So that will be helpful as well for social distancing when we start school
Right.
in our traditional model, because we're going to remove some of those students that would typically be in school that will be in the virtual track.
Just out of curiosity, when you sent the surveys out to your parents saying, these are our models, what would you prefer? Do you have any suggestions for anything else? What kind of response did you get?
Yeah, we had about 60% judge that said, "Open the doors. We're ready for school. We want you."
I mean, overall, did most parents respond? Most homes respond?
You know, I was really disappointed. I think typically, I don't know what the percentage is, but we had about 50% of our 4,000 families that responded. And of course, we've got a lot of siblings too, so some of those would be doubled up. But in a situation like we're in now, that is the talk of the town, and everybody's interested in it, I thought we'd have 95% people respond.
Right.
We didn't. We had about 50.
And of those 50, you said
of those 50, 60% want to come back to school with the traditional model.
Okay.
We had about a little more than 20% that preferred the blended model, and we had a little less than 20% that were in favor of the distance model.
Okay.
So we asked several other questions on that initial survey as well, with health concerns and connectivity to the internet and those kind of things. So let me circle back around to the August 3rd date, because you asked that question, and I want to be clear with that. So that's our goal, depending on current situations at the time, for school to start in scenario 1, the traditional type, with that virtual track. However, August 3rd on the calendar is our start date. We are planning for a transition time, a phase-in time, so to speak. And parents that have had students either in pre-K or kindergarten in the last 20 years or more know what a kindergarten phase-in looks like. And we're going to do something very similar with all of our students K through 8. And we didn't mention that earlier. We're just a K through 8 district. We don't have a high school. So in other words, all families are going to be invited to come in for one day and during that week of August 3rd. And so when I say families, the student and one parent.
Okay.
And so we're going to do that in small groups, and teachers will hold small group meetings within their classroom. We can still social distance at that point, but we have a lot to accomplish in our phase-in time. We want to start to build that relationship, for one. We want to make sure that every family has their device, the programs, the passwords that they need, the resources they need, just in case overnight we have to transfer at any point from the traditional scenario to a blended model or an all virtual model. So it would be our goal that the end of that first week, when we have every student in and one parent in from each family, that they walk away with packets of information, with a device, with passwords, with everything they need for all 3 scenarios moving forward. So that will be a transition week where we try to take care of all the housekeeping and set up the infrastructure, so to speak, for a successful school year. And then on August 10th, which is the next Monday, we're going to open the doors and we're going to have school that's going to look close to normal with our safety precautions in place.
And I guess part of that transition week is to give those parents some assurance that y'all have social distancing things in place, sanitation things in place.
Absolutely, yeah. We won't, by then we won't, and I said they will walk away with a packet of information. We will have finalized our plan by that time. And I'm a parent, and so I get it. And if I was sending a child to school in August, I would want to know, what the school is doing and the precautions that they're taking, and why they're thinking this way, and what's going to happen if someone tests positive.
That's another issue.
What would cause you to move from scenario 1, which is a traditional type setting, to a blended model or a virtual model, like we had to overnight when the governor made his recommendation and we had the tornado. We've talked about that. So
you mentioned the 145 school districts in the state. Are these plans that you have to submit to the state to be approved? Is this something you have to bounce off other school districts? Or how much flexibility or how much control do you have locally?
I'll tell you that we've got a lot of flexibility. When we ended the school year, that was pretty much a directive from the governor. we have learned that we're not going to get those directives as we start school. That those are going to be local decisions across the state of Tennessee. So I can tell you this: there's a lot of collaboration going on. School districts collaborate with each other on a daily basis, and we collaborate with the Department of Ed every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We have a conference call at 1 o'clock. We, as Middle Tennessee superintendents, we have a Friday Zoom call at 10 o'clock every Friday morning where we collaborate with each other. I had a meeting last Wednesday with Donna Wright here in Wilson County to compare notes. Hey, this is what we're thinking. What are you thinking?
And you have to do that.
And we have to do that.
Because you have some families that have high school students.
And we do that all the time here in Wilson County anyway. But, it's especially important now in this unusual, unprecedented situation that we collaborate and we do those things. So amazingly, and I knew just because of our 10 o'clock Friday Zoom calls that we were pretty close because most people in Middle Tennessee are thinking the same thing.
Right.
So I knew we were going to be pretty close. But when we met together last week, we're almost spot on.
Really?
There will be some minor differences, but we're really close to what we're planning.
Well, as we wrap up here, and again, thank you for your time and joining us. It's a fluid situation. Plan is to start the transition week August 3rd. School in person, traditionally August 10th, starting at that place. How can somebody keep abreast of this? If they go to the website, get the app, what do they need to do?
Yeah, you can always go to our website. We have tabs, COVID-19 resources, back to school information. As we roll out information, we always do it through School Messenger, which would either be a call out where you receive a phone call or an email. And if you have updated your information with our Skyward app that we use, and everybody in the school district is familiar with Skyward, you will receive that. So we always use that. We always send it out through our app as well. As parents, you can download the LSSD app and you'll get notifications. I get those notifications on my phone. We always send it out through Twitter as well. You can follow us at Lebanon SSD. As well as our website, because when we push something out, we automatically load it to our website as well. So we will be sending out our next information either Friday or Monday of next week, and then we're shooting for mid-July, and Wilson County Schools is doing the same thing. We're shooting for mid-July to roll out our official plan and what we're going to do and how school's going to look for the 2021 school year.
Well, hopefully you won't have any surprises. Too many surprises this
We're going to have surprises, Judge. We're going to have surprises.
Well, I commend you and your staff on having to put together a situation that frankly did occur overnight with the tornado and then the virus, and how well y'all have handled this professionally. And really for your classroom teachers, teachers' aides, and all of your staff to keep the community involvement going with the food program.
Yep, absolutely.
And also with the distant learning or the virtual learning that they've done.
Yep, and let's not forget our families there either. Our families, we're in a partnership with all of our families, and we couldn't do it if we didn't have the support of each other. And of course, I told you we've had several community meetings and meetings with parents, and you can imagine I'm having phone calls and emails with parents as well. And so we appreciate the feedback that we're receiving and the support that we're receiving during this difficult time.
All right. Well, listen, I know we're not supposed to shake hands or even bump elbows or so forth, but I want to give you that coffee cup for being a guest on here. That's a Talking with Tatum coffee mug, and you can put soup or coffee in it. The coffee will probably get cold before you get done. Thank you.
I appreciate that.
Thank you for joining.
Yes, sir.
Well, Dr. Donna Wright, thank you for joining Talking with Tatum again.
Thank you.
Now, we interviewed you before just about your life story and history about coming to Wilson County, and we were at the arcade, I believe, down on the square, and had a good session, and some people who have viewed that have learned a lot about you, and they've commented about what a great job you did. But our show here today, we really want to talk about what has happened in your life since March 2nd, and which is kind of a crucial day because that was the day the tornado came through Wilson County and directly impacted 2 of your schools as well as countless families and staff.
Absolutely.
And then even before the cleanup was done, we had the corona virus, the COVID-19 virus, impact Wilson County, and it has drastically changed this school year.
Yeah, I kept telling everyone I was waiting for the locust to appear. I mean, tornado, pandemic, why not?
Toads and frogs.
Everything,
yeah.
So when they came out with those killer hornets, I thought maybe that's it. So, but yes, this has been a life-changing event for for so many people.
Right.
Whether they're in schools or not, or even tied to schools, this has been something that Wilson County will remember for a very long time.
Well, it's right now wouldn't be the time to do it, but I hope somebody writes down a journal, and perhaps this program can be a little record for future generations that if they ever have to deal with an emergency again, it's not the end of the world. It's a crisis, and it's a challenge, but it can be managed and it can be worked through. So let's roll back to, say, March 2nd, school day, Monday, and everything's rocking along just normal, and then, of course, the tornado came through. What did you hear about the impact of schools? When did you hear it?
Well, let's start with March the 2nd, because that was an interesting day. It was a Monday. It was a beautiful day. And many of us were at Stoner Creek Elementary School that day, participating at Read Across America, celebrating Dr. Seuss's birthday. And so we were in the library, we were out in the hallways as they were having the storybook parade, all centered around Stoner Creek Elementary, not knowing that in less than 24 hours, that school wouldn't exist.
Wow.
And so that's sort of my mark in time. I've got a lot of nice videos. I have kindergartners reading to me. I'm reading to 3rd graders. It was just such a beautiful day. And I so vividly remember as leaving that school thinking, what a sweet school, but what's something that was a traditional moment at Stoner Creek. And in fact, the mayor was there, Mayor Hutto was there. There were a lot of different Wilson County personalities that had taken the day to come and spend at Stoner Creek. And so with that, I guess it was about, close to 2 o'clock in the morning, which would have been Tuesday morning, the 3rd. My daughter calls and wants to know if I am watching the news. And as a matter of fact, I was, because I was working on something, and I was paying attention to it. And she says, Mom, do you have the weather alert on? Looking at it, she says it's bearing down on us. And so when I pull it up, I see the big red, triangulation as far as Leeville Pike, Tucker's Gap. It was naming streets and neighborhoods. And I realized Tucker's Gap is where my deputy lives, Mickey Hall.
Yeah.
So I text him immediately, say, are you up? Are you watching what's happening? And within, it seemed like forever, but it was really like 5 seconds, he said, we were just hit.
Wow.
And Mayor Hutto lives across the street from him. And so that tornado, literally, as it had exited, as far as coming out of Mount Juliet, and skipped over a bunch of and hit what I call, hopscotched across the industrial center, then came across 109 and hit some brand new subdivisions, and then came over that hill and just plowed through there. And so it was one of those that, wow, just the magnitude. At this time, no one knows what has happened.
Right.
And so I immediately, I wasn't going to worry Mickey, because not knowing what had happened there, jumped in the county car to head to the central office, because that's sort of the brains of everything that we have. And going down Canesville Road, going north, there's some scrap yards there. And I realized those are power lines that are down, and those are trees that are down. And it's like, oh my gosh, it had already moved through here, because where I live on near Doug's Crossroads, the south part of Canesville, we could see the lightning and maybe some lights, but we didn't have the wind. We had the rain,
right,
but didn't know the magnitude. And as I'm getting closer to the central office, there were 3 houses that were under construction that were not there as I'm driving by. And then I'm realizing some landmarks are missing, and there's this huge debris that I had not really paid attention that's just everywhere. And I get to the central office and there's damage, but it's minimal, and start checking. And then by that time I get a call from our safety guy that looked like we had substantial school damage. That's all I knew, but they were headed out that way. They'd keep me informed. And it wasn't really until early morning that we knew that we had taken a direct hit on 2 of our schools. West Wilson sits directly in front of Stoner Creek. And even with that, across the street from the 2 schools, it looked like a war zone. The board chair, Larry Tomlinson, and I were probably on scene by 9 o'clock, trying to navigate getting there. And just the magnitude of what we were witnessing was something that even now, had it been 12 hours earlier, there were 1,700 kids on the 2 campuses, over 150 staff members, and we would have had fatalities.
Yeah.
And bless, I mean, one of our teachers, Ken Gluck, lived directly across the street from West Wilson Middle School, and he was making his way when they knew that it was bearing down on Mount Juliet to get his wife and daughter downstairs, went to get his elderly mother to get her downstairs too, and was just getting her when it just exploded, and found himself outside as well as his mother, and his house was totally destroyed. And 2 cars gone, couldn't find the cars, which, you know, at the time, I guess that's one of those things you don't quite understand what you're looking for or why that would stand out. But an 1/8 of a mile south, we would have had a 3rd school. Springdale missed the direct path by an 1/8 of a mile, and it hit up there as far as Chandler Road and what's a Crown? What's the name of that subdivision? Crown. I've lost it, but anyway, they took a direct hit. So it would have been 3 schools. It barely missed Lebanon High School as it went between the airport and going that direction, then skipped over and then out towards Tucker's. Smith County had some damage, and then it touched down again in Putnam, and that's where they did see the fatality. So March the 3rd, when we left on March the 2nd, we had no idea that we would not, that would be our last day of school, and that not knowing what we were going to be facing in the next 2 weeks, no one could have anticipated. And so we were quick to put together an emergency plan for school.
Right.
As far as that, making sure that, knowing that we had the next week as spring break, thinking we had time. So we put an emergency plan to put together for the final 9 weeks of school, and then we could plan from there. And then the pandemic really steamrolled through, and it was
And they're still dealing with it.
still dealing with it.
Well, that's kind of what I wanted to touch on here, and I mean, I really appreciate your vivid recollections of the storm damage and how that impacted you personally, as well as folks with the school system and the community.
We had over 100 teachers that had significant damage to their homes. 12 lost their homes completely. They were destroyed.
Wow.
And so we're still looking at, we still have several families that are residing in motels that do not have a permanent place to reside.
I've often, immediately after that, the people who had first gone down there and saw the destruction, I remember them commenting, said it's a good thing that happened in the middle of the night instead of when school was in session, because it would have been a tragedy down there with our
The
schools.
library that we were all seated in literally imploded, came into it.
Yeah.
And in fact, just 2 days ago, recovered video off a camera off the gym right before they're getting ready to demolish it that had captured 10 seconds as this tornado is coming in and it's facing the Mount Juliet Christian Academy facility that literally rolls up and rolls out. And you know, some of their football equipment was found in Carthage, Tennessee.
I did not know.
Yes,
That.
a helmet and a couple of jerseys. But you can see the storm going through and literally going, everything's sucked that way. And then as that, I guess it's that tailwind that comes back around, you can see it literally clear out the area and the roof goes and it's gone. 10 seconds.
Well, that one was kind of out of the blue and real quick, left a lot of damage, impacted a lot of lives. The virus, though, we had a little bit more lead time. I'd heard discussions about, well, it's coming, and I'm not really sure how it's transmitted and what precautions need to be taken. But then
And is it really
it-
as bad as it's being projected?
And then it just continues to progress almost like a tide rolling in, that it just doesn't stop and it starts to inundate us. And of course, there were discussions about, well, is school going to go back in session after spring break, first part of April, mid-April, 1st of May. But the virus continued to proceed, and finally the decision had to be made that the school year was going to have to stop in the traditional setting. But you were able, somewhat belatedly, to have graduations for your senior classes and kind of put an end to the 1920 school year. So we've got the 2021 school year coming up. And that's one of those things that y'all planned that a year in advance. So this time a year ago, y'all were
Our
already...
calendar was already approved. Everything as far as even what we call our stockpile days,
Yeah.
which we do a lot of professional development. I mean, we plan a year in advance with enough flexibility that we know that there will be changes with the State Department, the State Board of Education. There can even be federal guidelines, particularly when you have high school students.
Right.
And so we've got some, I guess it's more than just flexibility, but we can go in and make adjustments as needed. Just didn't know how much.
Well, yeah, I don't know that anybody anticipated this many
Yeah.
adjustments, but if you would, just give us a quick idea about what the start of the upcoming 2021 school year is going to look like, and then we can go back and talk about the decision-making process and things that were considered and maybe got put aside or modified in some way.
Well,
So what's it going to look?
we have to back up to last spring simply
Okay.
because that when you look at the time that we not only were out of school, and it's more than just high school students, you're talking about young children that we have programs that go as young as 3 years of age, all the way up to 18, and in some instances with special needs students that might be 22 years old. And so when you look at the magnitude of being out from March the 2nd through the end of the year and projecting as far as what we would need to start the next school year, there's always that concern about learning loss. And so we started building into that plan, that knowing that we were not prepared for a virtual or a remote learning process because, again, we lost so much there at the two schools, but we're not able to go back into our schools to retrieve much was left there. So we were in a whole different dynamic than really the rest of the state. And that was recognized that, we just didn't have the opportunity. So with that, we immediately kicked in as far as giving reassurance first for graduating seniors. What if we've not completed? What if we've not, and I'll have to say our teachers, they might not have had the technology available because so much was left at the school with the anticipation that they'd be back on Tuesday, that our teachers kicked in to make sure that there was not any gap, particularly for high school students, that once they left, they were finished and there would not be any, I guess, consideration that they might not have been prepared, because we had kids that we had a young lady accepted the Naval Academy. We had a number going off to military schools. We had students that had already been accepted for summer enrollment at universities and colleges, which that did change, but we had to make sure that they left with confidence. But the next sense was parents wanting assurances that, will my child be held back a year?
Right.
And those were natural concerns. So much of what we were doing was to make sure that, when we return, it's not about going into new instruction immediately. So that was part of what we were not only communicating, but also working through, as far as that when we come back to school, that the mission that we've been, and it's something that's been very important as a district for the last 3 years, that we really pay attention to individual students. And that was something we reassured parents, that we don't know what it will look like, but this is what we're going to tell you with confidence that we will do. That we go back and do a soft assessment. Don't think about it as testing, but what is it that students still have retained? And I've told parents, kids are resilient. We need to give them a little more credit, but there's things that we can do to make sure that if there's any gap in that learning, particularly from looking at that point prior to spring break, what we can do to sort of scaffold it, rebuild it, give them confidence that we're ready to move on before we ever hit the new instruction, because that's a thing that we really pride ourselves on as far as looking at the individual student, looking at where they are instead of moving them through, as I lovingly call, the herd technique. And it's really paid off for us. I think that's why we've had such outstanding outcomes with student performance, both in achievement and growth. And teachers appreciate that too, because I said, again, when we come back, I want you to get back into as far as more than just the name on the roster, know who they are, and also pay attention to behaviors, listen, because our kids have been traumatized.
That's right.
And whether, again, 5 or 18, we don't know what experience that they've been through, whether the family has, lost income, lost jobs, if they've been evicted from their homes, have they been food deprived? Whatever it might be, we don't know what they've been through for 5.5 months by the time we return to school. And so we've spent a lot of time in training with teachers, making sure that we're going to look at that social emotional aspect and not make any assumptions as far as what our children have been through. But in the same sense, we, as an organization, we have to pay attention to our teachers as well, because they've been through trauma as well. This is something, Judge, that I've been in this for nearly 40 years, and I think I've had a lot of life experiences, but I don't know of anyone that has been able to plan or navigate something to the magnitude that we've been through. And again, it's not something that's unique to Wilson County or the state of Tennessee. It's across the nation right now. Right. But we don't know what the residual impact of all this will be. And so we need to really pay attention and let children know that they're cared for before we start looking at new instruction. And I've already assured our teachers that the state has not let up on the accountability piece, but that's the least of my worries and and it should be the least of theirs, because again, we're going to work on that really that social and emotional piece and get back into the rhythm and routine and structure of school. So right now we're scheduled for August the 3rd.
Okay.
And we haven't changed that on the calendar. And the thing that we do not have our survey results back, will not be back, because we pushed it out there at a time that we were hoping that we weren't going to see any more requirements or changes from the state or the state board, even though the State Board of Education released their continual learning plan yesterday, which has creates some concerns, but that's another chapter and all of that. But we waited deliberately to find out, because the things that we know that will be a concern is the number of families that do not have internet access. And everyone immediately thinks that that's something that has to do with economically disadvantaged, but that's not the case. Mm-hmm. When you just look at the geographic, as far as the geography of our district, we're talking about over 580 square miles. And we've got pockets, what I call deep black holes, that even a hotspot will not create what they need. And so the lack of access to high-speed internet, the inability as far as maybe not even having the technology other than a smartphone, which is not something that would be desirable on a virtual platform. So we've looked at that as far as access, technology, and then the need that as far as what kind of, what would they need if we had to revert back to a virtual or remote learning process. And then the next thing as far as looking at it, and some parents thought they were voting, they're not voting, but surveying as far as what would the preference be if we had to, and going into a traditional or normal school setting with a great deal of modifications.
Right.
A remote learning aspect, and then looking at a hybrid plan, which is something that around the country right now, looking at where you can divide your population as far as looking at social distancing, and it would be an A-B hybrid schedule, which some districts have already launched that's what they're going to do, but many of them are very small districts and can make that move quickly. So right now, That's been pushed out. We're already getting, I know that I've had a lot of emails, phone calls from parents saying that this is what I vote for. Well, it's not a vote. I know what this might appear to be, but what we need to know, where is your comfort level as far as August 3rd, and if we need to make some adjustments. Right now, from just anecdotal information, because we've got a third party that's compiling, so there's not anything as far as that we're working it to
Right.
suit us. Right now, the parents are wanting to go back to school. And again, those are the ones that have reached out. And the number one reason that they want us to go ahead and open schools and get back to a routine, they need to go back to work and they need childcare. 10 years ago, that would have been somewhat offensive. And I mean that in the sense as far as that's not why we have school.
Mm-hmm.
But today, it's not. Because we know that we are probably one of the most important economic drivers in any community. Parents depend on us on having school so they can go back to making a living and providing for their family. And we know what that snowball is as far as the more people that we can get back to work, we can get back to a semblance of what we had before this all started. There's also a group of parents that I think they're misunderstanding, but from what I understand, this is emerging in several districts right now. They would like to have a remote learning track and for us to provide the devices and to know which teacher that they're going to be assigned to, and which they would literally remote into the classroom, and the teacher would take responsibility for them while they stay at home. Well, we can't do that. It would be near impossible.
When you mean take responsibility for them while they're at home,
Oh.
does that mean like
They would be watching as far as taking part in instruction in the classroom, but they're staying at home.
if you're not participating in the class, I'm going to call your mom at work, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but they thought they had a good plan. And again, I understand that. There's still that fear as far as if I
Right.
send my child to school. So you have all that. But the big thing, I guess the big limitation that really concerns me, and I've expressed it to commission, I've expressed it at several national webinars for superintendents, because again, this is a national problem.
Right.
Access to high-speed internet. In fact, they refer to it as whether it's the digital divide, closing the homework gap. There's all kinds of monikers that they're putting to this. But the big thing is it becomes an equity issue simply for those that have access, because it's information, it's knowledge, it's the ability to be able to accelerate your learning. There's so much that you can attach to having that access to those that are relying on a phone.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've got to figure out how to address that, and it's not getting a lot of attention simply because it's going to take funding. And then we also have the lobbyists as far as that, and giving examples right here in Lebanon, for example. We have neighborhoods that are almost in the middle of a triangle where you might have 3 different providers of internet service. But if you're in that piece right there, it's too expensive to run a line through to accommodate 14 to 20 homes, and they wouldn't recover or recoup their what they've expended for 8 years. Well, so they are not able to access, and so they're relying on either hotspots that they can bring in. But again, there's some difficulty with that. We have families that live up on the lake that are on a waiting list to get onto the Hughes satellite. So these are the issues that, quite frankly, keep me awake at night.
Okay.
That we can start school but be nimble and flexible enough that if we have another uptick, a surge, which we're starting to see right now, that we can get devices home with every child, with parent instructions, as far as we're doing videos for parents on how to work with technology at home. Mm-hmm. But it won't matter if we can't download it offline. It's almost for naught. And we did a grand experiment. I charged our RT people. I said our biggest issue right now is Watertown community. So what happens if we create access for the community, not just for students, but access to the community at one of our schools with a large enough parking lot that all they have to do is pull in and park, and they have access to the internet. Let's see if it works. Well, Tom Waller, he's one that usually rolls his eyes when I come up with these grand ideas. He said, well, let's see if we can do it. And they did. And we had people, many of them with their students, that because we had all kinds of resources, we were doing the best we can to get learning and as far as not only the instruction but how to access and where parents could become the teachers and giving them instructions on how to do it. Well, they were coming into the parking lot with their children, as well as people in the community pulling in there at Watertown Middle School, and it was a success. It was a success. We had a couple of people saying, you're not quite sure, how do you check to make sure that they're doing what they need to be doing? And I said, well, we're not going to patrol it or monitor it.
Right.
If they're going to pull into the parking lot of a school so they can access the internet, good for them. So that gives me a little bit of hope that maybe we can expand that. We're already looking at what we can do to meet to some other spots, even taking a school bus, a mobile internet access, Wi-Fi access, and putting it into some areas where we know that they are lacking that, and let our bus drivers take them and park them as far as where people can access.
See, these are things that I had no idea about what y'all were struggling with on this.
That's a huge limitation.
But we skipped over this at the start, and I should have asked you on here. How many students are in the Wilson County school system?
Right now, we're looking at 19,300. We have 425 kids more than when we left school on March the 3rd.
So
They're still
you're
coming.
closing in on 20,000. And how many staff employees do you have?
I have 1,300 certified staff that are teachers and administrators, about 1,000 classified. So we're looking about 2,500 employees.
So you're looking at probably the largest employer in Wilson County.
We are.
And a huge number of people trying to accommodate. Being able to exchange that information, saying these are our options or this is what we're looking at to do. How do, as a parent or a grandparent, someone who's has a child in the school system, how do I access that information saying, this is our plan for right now, school's going to start August 3rd, and what the school year is going to look like? What's the best way for them to reach out?
Well, and this is, everything's contingent as far as July the 2nd, it's a work session for the school board. Again, our plan is so expansive because
Right.
we're looking at everything from transportation, food services, looking at special ed, looking at access to special services because some of our kids need speech therapy, occupational, all those elements. And so the board will get the full preview. They've had a framework 2 weeks ago. And so we've had over 98 people with the large community and then subcommittees to make sure that we have not left anything or overlooked anything. So it's quite expansive. And so that will go July the 2nd. July the 6th is the regular meeting. And it's not so much to approve, but as far as that, the blessing as far as we want to open school, as far as face-to-face in a classroom, with all these modifications, and the big thing being the hygiene, the sanitation,
Right.
the protocols that will have to be followed that will be hard, particularly for the younger children. But this is what we can do to open school. But also with the idea that if given the alert, whether it's the governor, whatever is coming out of the health department, that we have to back up and go into a remote setting, this is the protocol as far as that teachers have been trained. We're doing a parent university. Again, it's a series of videos for parents to be able to access, go in there and say, okay, my child's forgot their login, they don't remember their password, how do I get it? To how do I navigate? We've got a learning management system that it's sense of pride that our teachers have pulled together, that not only do teachers access it to go in to get resources, but unit plans, lesson plans, that it's a scope and sequence. It's really, really nice. Our parents can go in there as well as far as, okay, this is what a second grader in English language arts on Monday, this day, this is what they should be working on.
Okay.
So we're, again, helping parents that, you can't replicate a classroom, but here's some resources that can at least give you a semblance that,
We
on their device.
accomplished our task today.
At least do something, because that's what happened originally in March and April. We had parents trying to replicate classrooms, and I heard a lot of, students were expelled the first 2 days from their, from their home. And so we all laughed about that, but parents really started appreciating their teachers
Right.
a lot. So all that July the 6th. Once the blessing from the board, and I feel pretty confident that we're not going to see any more adjustments coming out of the state board or the Tennessee Department of Education. Some of the smaller districts had jumped out with plans already. And what came out yesterday, they're going to have to go back and readjust because they've dictated that it's going to be quality 180 days of instruction, even with the pandemic, and 6.5 hours of daily instruction. So.
Well, it sounds like the key word on this is flexibility.
Flexibility and patience.
And certainly you've had to be flexible. Yeah, I don't know how patient you can be with all this because it sounds like you didn't have a lot of downtime in all of this. But the school board meeting, July 6th, that's open to the public.
It's open to the public.
And can access that, I believe, on Wilson County
But
Television.
we'll push it out to parents too because we have a really strong communication department. It'll get pushed out. We also, on our website, we do alerts. We've got an app that parents have got on their phones that'll also give them an alert, which will work through that. Because with that, what we're thinking, and in working with the special school district as well, the week of August 3rd, we both have on our calendar to start school. The 6th is on Election Day, which schools are out.
Right.
And so we're looking at a phase-in plan that first week. Part of it to get even teachers acclimated because we're going to have different routes. 2 of the high schools are going to have 7th and 8th graders in it.
That's right.
And so for us, it's going to be a little bit different as far as getting those 7th and 8th graders in there first so they can navigate the high school in their wing. And so they can get in there, and then we'll bring in the 9th and 10th graders and then the 11th and 12th graders. But at the same sense, the rest of the district phase in the kindergarten through 2nd grade. And then look at the 3rd, 4th, and then in one elementary school we're going to have 6th graders mixed in with a 5th grader. So we've got it all mapped out, but use that first week as a transition plan, and then August 10th start school.
Okay.
So.
Well, it sounds like a lot of work has been done, and I thank you for that. But especially anybody who's a member of our community wants to thank the teachers. The teachers' aides, the certified staff, everybody involved with the school system, because it's a team effort on this, and it's been an extraordinary time for them to pull together. But I want to thank you for showing the patience and the leadership and the flexibility for this and setting a good example.
Never seen anything like it. But I'm glad that you commend the teachers, though, Judge. And let me tell you why. Because there were some comments that well, they've had a long vacation. Our teachers never missed a beat.
Right.
And the thing that I guess take really pride in that how many teachers, and they were checking with the principals just to let them know as far as that every child had a call at least once a week, even the high school kids. And then we had Lebanon High School, the choral teacher, they had a big musical coming up, 9 to 5. It was a junior musical, and they didn't get to perform it. So she set up a Zoom performance where every child was in their home, and they all came in and did their parts, and it was synchronized beautifully.
Wow.
And so they never missed a beat. And again, they happened all across the county. And for those that thought that, boy, that was a long vacation for teachers, they were so worried about their students and not being able to touch them that many times I'd get a note from a teacher saying, "You've got to see this," where it looked like the Brady Bunch on a screen, and all these little, and particularly the younger kids, as far as just wanting their teacher to recognize them, and they'd sing together and everything, and it was so necessary and so needed.
Yeah.
And we'll take care of the kids.
Well, I know you're doing that, and I know the people of the school system are going to be doing that. Thank you for doing this, and love to have you back to talk about what the final plan looks like, and hopefully we won't have any big surprises this coming year.
I hope not. I don't need any more surprises.
Thank you again for joining us, and let's don't shake hands and maintain our protocols, but I want to give you a cup there. I don't think I had those in when I interviewed you
I
before.
have one, but let me tell you what I use them for. They are great soup cups.
Absolutely.
And I use that in the microwave for my soup.